10 years. 10 years of pain, 10 years of lies, 10 years of PR shit shows. But hey, so on this special edition of Outspoken today, the royal YouTube sensation, according to Taz and myself, are celebrating not what I think are highlights, Tash, because let's be honest, there's been a lot of pain connected to these moments, especially for royalists, but also the human beings involved. You know, a dying Prince Philip, a dying Queen Elizabeth II, a cancer-stricken Catherine, the Princess of Wales, a totally despondent Prince William. But I think along the way, you also have to look at this decade and think, well, actually, it has galvanize a lot of us to realize what we're up against, to realize the PR machine that surrounded someone like Meghan Markle. And if people like you, Tash, hadn't actually decided to go independent, start calling out her, and I'm sorry to use the term, but her bullshit, because it is. And I do think a few odd exceptions who were in the mainstream media at the time, like me, but outside of the royal rota, then actually we might be in a very different place today. Meghan could actually be celebrating the end of the British royal family, right?
Yeah, I mean, 10 years. Has it been 10 years?
10 years since she met Harry. And I guess at that point, Tash, I mean, I know some
When
of
it
you
all
were on it
started.
from the start, but I guess for the first couple of years, we had hope at least. Maybe we had some nervousness, but we had hope.
Yeah, I mean, it was the build up towards the wedding, wasn't it?
When did you first realize? When did you first realize, Tash, that something was wrong?
I liked her when she first came on the scene with Harry, because I thought after he'd broken up with Cressida and he met an actress that likes going out and partying and having fun, and I thought, you know what? She's his Fergie. That's why Fergie was so suited to Andrew. I mean, obviously we know terrible things about them now, but back then, you know, people really did like them because they were playful and fun together. And I thought Harry was actually better suited to a woman like this, that doesn't take herself too seriously, that does quite happily walk around in jeans and a shirt and a beanie and a baseball cap, and isn't obsessed with fame and with money. But I was duped, like many, many people. You know, Meghan did dupe people. She was very clever at making people think that she was actually someone that was just down to earth, which she wasn't. It became more apparent when I noticed the paparazzi strolls. So it was just before the engagement announcement, and I noticed that Meghan was appearing quite a lot. Prince Harry's girlfriend, and there were lots of stories coming out saying that she was being hounded and chased, but you never actually saw videos of her being hounded and chased. And then, of course, with the big statement that came out where Harry's like, "Leave my girlfriend alone, everybody's being racist, everybody's being mean," I was like, oh dear, she really is an actress. And then from that point, I think once you start to have the wool pulled from your eyes, you started to see these stories coming out about how Meghan was complaining about Catherine not giving her a lift into town, and Meghan was shopping and photographed outside the front of the palace when she could have used the private back entrance. It was becoming very, very obvious that she was going to cause a problem. And I think it was, Ingrid Stewart, I think it was, she turned around and said that this is going to go badly, that she's going to marry into the family and she's going to be out of there with Harry, with the kids, with her bags of gold. And she was right. She was spot on. But yeah, I'd say it was from that moment when she was photographed more and more and it was being released. And then she did an interview, I think it was a Vanity Fair, dressed like a princess whilst Harry was telling the world to leave her alone. It became very obvious that what Meghan was saying and the way she was behaving wasn't quite marrying up, you know.
Indeed. Well, Tash, for me, the first moment that I think I really realized something was very wrong was in those weeks before the wedding, when I became friends with Samantha Markle and was so horrified by Meghan's treatment of her own father. I think for me, I'm such a family guy, you know, my mum and my dad.
You were on the inside as well, Dan, as it were. You were on the inside with the Markles, really finding out what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, but do you know what's interesting, Tash? Do you know the only reason I did it was because, and this is one of the reasons why I speak out against the royal rota, and I know not everyone likes that because they look at someone like Rebecca English and they think, oh, she's a nice person. And yes, we're all happy that Rebecca English won in her court case against Prince Harry. No one's disputing that. But the Royal Rota were completely complicit at that time, Tash, in a cover-up in regards to the behaviour of Meghan Markle. And I knew her behaviour was appalling. And remember, I was in the mainstream media, yes, but I was totally outside of the Royal Rota, and my role was executive editor of The Sun. So I had quite a lot of power within the mainstream media to actually chase my own stories. And there was a terrible woman. She actually hosts a podcast now. Honestly, one of the worst people I've ever worked with, called Emily Andrews. You may have seen her on Royal Podcast, and apologies if you like her and think she's a nice person.
No.
But she was a terrible, terrible person, covering up for Meghan Markle and trying to stop my original reporting on Meghan Markle.
Yeah, that was a massive red flag, wasn't it? When he went in for a radio interview as well, and he turned around and said that they were going to be the family that she never had. So it was very apparent that Meghan was telling lies, that she was like an orphan Annie, that she grew up in absolute poverty, that she had nothing. Obviously, this is Meghan trying to get Harry to be her hero and to save her. This is why Harry got Meghan to go to that first Christmas, despite them. I think they weren't engaged. She was a girlfriend, and that went against all previous royal girlfriends, because normally you have to have a ring on your finger to go, because he said that Meghan would be alone. She's got no one to love her. And it shows the manipulation that Meghan was capable of. But the treatment of her father was something that I have always been disgusted by. I think many people, it hit people, I think, that have lost their fathers as well, people that would give a second, you give absolutely anything to have that moment again. And I think that resonated with a lot of people, where he just adored her entire life. And for Harry to not even have had the basic respect, the basic decency to meet him, and it was becoming all the more obvious that something shady was going on as well, because he was meant to be walking her down the aisle, but Harry had never met him. They'd never flown him over to the UK like they did Doria. He hadn't even had a suit fitted. It was obvious before Thomas did those photographs that he wasn't going to go to that wedding. I don't think Meghan ever had any intentions of dear old dad going, because Thomas Markle would out her for all of the lies that she's told. And that's the very same reason why she didn't want any friends, any family, even her Suits co-stars. When it came to the evening reception of the wedding, they were allowed to come during the day for the photos. So it made, the public see, oh, Meghan does have people. Oh, look, there's some of her Suits co-stars. But they were not invited to the evening, because Meghan had told so many lies, in my opinion, she couldn't risk them going around having a few drinks and sinking some of those ships. But yeah, it
100%.
was awful.
When Harry and Meghan first became a couple, the reaction wasn't universally negative. In fact, many people were excited. Meghan was an actress. She was American. She was divorced. She was outspoken and independent. And for many supporters, that made her seem like exactly the kind of person who could bring something new to the monarchy. Harry appeared happy. The couple looked modern. And for a while, the story seemed almost perfect. But behind the photographs, questions were already beginning to emerge. As Meghan's relationship with Harry became public, media attention intensified. There were stories about photographers. There were stories about Meghan's treatment by the press. And Harry himself took the extraordinary step of publicly defending his girlfriend. Supporters saw that as evidence of a young couple being relentlessly targeted. Critics saw something different. They began questioning the way Meghan's public image was being constructed. And from that point forward, the argument became increasingly polarized. You were either defending Harry and Meghan, or defending the monarchy. There seemed to be very little room in between. Then came 2018. The world watched Harry and Meghan get married. For millions of people, it was a spectacular moment. A new chapter appeared to be beginning. But behind the celebration were controversies involving Meghan's family, particularly her father, Thomas Markle. The circumstances surrounding the wedding became intensely controversial. And for critics of Meghan, this became an early example of what they considered a contradiction between the public image and private reality. For supporters, however, the situation demonstrated just how difficult Meghan's family circumstances had become under unprecedented media pressure. Either way, the wedding did not end the controversy. It was only the beginning. After the wedding came increasingly intense speculation about relationships inside the royal family. Stories circulated about Harry and Meghan's relationship with William and Catherine. There were reports of disagreements. There were competing accounts of who said what. And eventually, Harry and Meghan's decision to step away from royal duties changed everything. Suddenly, this wasn't simply a disagreement within a famous family. It was an institutional crisis. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex were leaving the front line of the monarchy. And they were going to speak publicly about why. Then came the interview that shocked the world. Harry and Meghan sat down with Oprah Winfrey. And allegations were made about their experiences inside the royal family. Questions surrounding race, mental health, security, and family relationships suddenly dominated international headlines. Supporters believed the interview finally gave Harry and Meghan an opportunity to tell their side. Critics questioned the accuracy of some of the claims and demanded greater context. And from that moment, the battle wasn't just between family members. It became a battle over whose version of events the public should believe. Then came the Netflix documentary. Then came Harry's memoir, Spare. Each new revelation created another wave of headlines.
Then the next moment, Tash, for me, was Tiara Gate and the pre-wedding behaviour, which I just got into. But the key thing, Tash, and this is, I think, what always informed my reporting right from the start, was that it was the Queen who was unhappy. And it just made everything so different right from the start, because they couldn't just blame courtiers or men in grey suits, Tash. It was the Queen. It was the Queen. She picked up the phone directly to Prince Harry and said, Meghan cannot behave like this. And I was so happy that actually I was able to confirm the Queen's involvement, because it really did mean Harry and Meghan. I mean, they still tried, of course, but it made it much harder for them to deny the depths of concern.
Yeah, I mean, the way that they treated everybody from the moment that she joined, it was clearly obvious that Meghan was not treating anybody around her nicely, the staff. But for the Queen to have to get involved so many times to tell Meghan, you don't talk to the staff like that, you don't treat our chefs like that, you don't treat the gardeners like that. This is not how we treat people, Meghan. You know, that you can't just have what you want. This is the tiara you're going to have. I just cannot imagine someone. Meghan at the time was also trying to, it's a bit like her, one minute she's marching down the carpet, sashaying like she's a superstar, and the next minute she's doing the coy hand over mouth, like, I'm so shy, I'm a little wallflower act. This was very similar. She was trying to tell the world that she's really down to earth. Yet behind the scenes, she was a diva, like had never entered in the royal family before. She was demanding, she was rude, she was horrible to everybody, because Meghan obviously feels like it makes her feel powerful. And she was encouraging that sort of behavior in Harry. Yes, Harry, you can speak to people like they are a piece of dog muck on your shoe. Yes, you can do this. I mean, there are so many different reports that came out. The Queen spoke to her. William spoke to her. Do not continue to treat people like this. And Meghan is incapable of treating people nicely, because she sees everybody as either someone that is going to be of use to her, and whilst they are of use, she'll love bomb them to death. And that's why celebrities and famous people say she's the nicest, sweetest person that you could ever meet in your entire life. But anybody else that's worked with her, worked for her, or even perhaps someone that was once a former friend has said, oh, when she turns on you, she really turns. She really is the master of deception, that one. Oh yeah, she was. They played so many games, and it's never made sense to a lot of people, but it's also enabled the conspiracy theories, if you can call them that. Some are conspiracies, but some of them are just people looking at it logically. Anybody that's ever carried a baby, for example, has turned around and said there is no way that you can, at 8-9 months pregnant, that large, bend down to the floor in 5-inch stilettos with your knees together, because the baby literally doesn't squish up in itself. It cannot go anywhere. Bumps are solid. But it's the fact she doesn't even wobble as she stands up. Oh, Meghan does yoga. Yoga does not teach you something like that. But again, because of the games that Meghan and Harry played, let's move away from the moon bump theory. But even the messing about, saying that she'd gone into labor, oh no, the baby had been born. Harry, when he came out, when they, this photograph is perfect, when they showed the baby to the world. They refused to show the baby to the world. That baby is wrapped up so tight, you can just about see a nose and an eye. They only allowed one person in there, I think it was, wasn't it, Dan? There was only one person that was allowed to ask questions and to film Archie. And Harry refused to even turn the baby to the camera. You know, it was, the whole thing was bizarre. But
Exactly. And what did they have to hide? Why? What were they so worried about?
They caused this storm, and they continue to do so about both of their children and the surrogacy. And that video, that awful, tacky, chavvy dancing, twerking with curtains up her dress. I mean, seriously. Yeah.
And then we come to my 9th lowlight, Tash. But I think this is when things had turned a bit. And all of a sudden we could have a bit of fun, because in some ways, Tash, we won. Because yes, they had those 3 terrible moments, but and I talk about this as a collective, a community, so many people doing such incredible work, so many anonymous accounts on X, you know, Meghan's Mole, Royal Grift, so many we could talk about. Exactly. Doing so much work. And in some ways, by the 9th lowlight, we'd won. Because for me, it's the launch of With Love Meghan and Was Never. And it's almost the failure, Tash. Because sure, by this point, we've had the end of the Spotify deal, Bill Simmons saying effing grifters. You know, there's been a whole load of moments leading up to it. But I think it was with Love Meghan and Was Never. And it's like, this ain't going to work. And it's your own fault.
They had gone from people being scared that they were going to bring down the monarchy to destroying their own credibility because of the number of lies that they told, because of the petty and vicious things that they said. People could see, hang on a minute, these aren't humanitarians. These aren't even people that I think are actually mentally stable with some of the stuff that those two have come out with. And obviously all of the continuous lies. So then when they have done such terrible things to their own families, and then Meghan comes out skipping gaily around the garden, picking vegetables. Well, she didn't. She got them from the farmer's market. But, you know, and then trying to push this whole sweetness, love and kindness. It was so fake. But yes, you can just laugh at them. At this point, we got South Park. Now, that one, I don't know if you had that in there. I'm sorry if I've just like...
No, do you know what, Tash? I didn't, but I think you're right, actually. I think it's almost a more important moment, because...
That was like the closing point between those 3 big major things, and then them being a complete and utter mess, a laugh. People poke fun at them. But yeah, I would say in between that finished it for them, really, because they hit the nail on the head. But
private conversations became public. Family disagreements became international news. And details that once might have remained inside the family were suddenly being discussed around the world. For supporters, Harry was finally telling his truth. For critics, the disclosures represented a devastating attack on his own family. And the divide became almost impossible to bridge. But something else happened during this decade. A new generation of royal commentators emerged online. YouTube channels, podcasts, and independent journalists began challenging traditional royal coverage. Some argued that mainstream royal reporting had been too sympathetic toward Harry and Meghan. Others argued that online critics had gone too far and created an equally distorted narrative. And this is where the story becomes bigger than Harry and Meghan. Because the battle was no longer simply about what happened. It was about who gets to define what happened. The palace had its version. Harry and Meghan had theirs. Mainstream journalists had theirs. And millions of people online developed their own conclusions. Harry and Meghan have built a life outside the working monarchy. King Charles leads the royal family. William and Catherine represent the future of the institution. And the relationship between Harry and his family remains one of the most watched stories in the world. But perhaps the greatest legacy of this decade isn't one interview, one book, or one royal departure. It's the complete transformation of the conversation surrounding the monarchy. The public no longer receives royal news from just a handful of newspapers and television networks. There are now thousands of voices. Some defend Harry and Meghan. Can the truth of a family conflict ever be completely known when every participant has a different version of events? Because behind the palace walls, behind the headlines and behind the cameras, there are private conversations that the public will never hear. 10 years ago, Harry and Meghan looked like the beginning of a new royal era. Today, their story represents something very different. A family divided. An institution challenged. A media industry transformed. And a public still arguing over what really happened. 10 years of romance. 10 years of controversy. 10 years of competing narratives. And perhaps the most dramatic chapter hasn't even been written yet. Because families can change. Institutions can change. Public opinion can change. And one thing is certain. The Harry and Meghan story is nowhere near forgotten. The only question is what the next 10 years will bring. What do you think? Was Harry and Meghan's departure inevitable? Could the royal family have handled the situation differently? And after everything that has happened, do you believe reconciliation is still possible? Leave your thoughts below. And subscribe for more analysis of the stories shaping the modern monarchy.